All right, Houston Havens, ready to go with you, waterfowl coordinator. Duck numbers have been below average so far this season, and depending on which duck hunter you talk to, he may say it's even worse than that.
They could say that, but just like always, if we're having a down year, there's always going to be people, it seems like, that are still, managing to do pretty well, and so we have had some of those reports. So, we typically say reports have been spotty, and that is actually the truth. There's still been some bright spots for sure, so don't want to downplay it too much. And on the other end, when we have a lot of birds,
I think we can downplay. I think we can pour a thunderstorm over the head of most duck hunters and just be like, yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, you talk to them and it's like, this is the worst I've seen in years.
Well, it started off good though, right?
It did start off pretty good. It just didn't last very long, and we typically go into early December with kind of what we call a December lull.
Mild conditions wet conditions equal limited success.
That's right.
And also the fact that there just hadn't been a whole lot of big time winter anywhere.
That's right. Right.
Much less. I mean, it got a cold snap or two here, but we needed to get really cold up north for them to come down here.
Right, and it needs to be sustained as well. Just a real quick turn. Cold turn. We have had a few of those. Kind of getting pretty cool here in Mississippi, and of course we always say we do like to see it cold during the winter in Mississippi for hunting conditions, but really what's driving migrations is what's going on, miles and miles north of us. And that just hasn't happened in a sustained fashion. We're just getting small little pulses, but there's still plenty of habitat available to the north of us. It hasn't frozen over, like we generally need to have before, mass migrations of waterfowl are coming down to Mississippi and staying.
When does duck season wrap up?
Last Sunday in January, so that's going to be the 27th this year.
So I got some folks that are hoping that they'll get some cooler temperatures up to the north of us now. The average high and low temperatures for November were slightly colder than December.
Yep. So I just picked a couple of stations across Mississippi this morning and looked at those averages, and it's definitely not a typical thing.
We had that one front in November where it got really cold for
it was
3 or 4 days.
November,
or
11th.
And then we probably haven't seen the 20s for a low in a while now.
That's right. Yeah, so we had good wetland conditions to start off, and got that brief cold weather in November, and things were looking pretty good at that point. But it's it's kind of
you talk to people that keep pretty good records during duck season, and you chit chat with them, and they even keep up with days of ice that they have to deal with. And I was talking to somebody a week or two ago, and they're like, I think I remember one day that we even had to deal with ice. You hadn't had to break ice yet. You hadn't got the mauls and the axes out, and I don't know that that's going to happen either. But there's hope, I guess. There is still hope because there's 20 days, right? 3 weeks left.
That's right.
Houston.
Yep.
And where there's days, there's chances.
Right, and we typically do see, in a normal year, I would say, we do see our peak waterfowl numbers in either mid or late January. So, what that number is going to look like compared to most
So will a
Januaries.
duck, like, just because it's January 15th, start thinking I better go south? Because if that's the case, we still do have hope.
We do, and a lot of them are migration chronology is kind of based on other things, not just weather. Weather definitely intensifies it.
Yeah.
But you got species like teal and pintail that are gonna migrate.
We got reservations down in
That's
Mexico,
right.
man. I got to get there.
Day length starts changing.
Come on.
Weather patterns in general start to change, and they'll move on down. So hopefully we still got some of those.
Yeah.
Reports from states north of us are saying they're still seeing a lot of birds, but.
Yeah,
hopefully they're going to move on down.
And they're closing up too, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
there's a lot of zones that are already closed and still have birds and open habitat available.
Mm.
Well, and I guess the next question is where we need to get to is where are the dogs right now? I mean, where are they hanging out?
We're on schedule to start up our early January, what we call our midwinter waterfowl survey. Actually tomorrow, so we'll get a much updated.
You going flying in an airplane is what you're telling me.
That's right. We'll be getting up and taking a look at things and kind of getting an update of how things look right now overall. But what we've seen from previous surveys and talking with hunters is flooding, high water from whether it's interior Delta or Mississippi River water levels that have come up, and that seems to be where birds are getting to. It's definitely no secret that ducks like newly flooded habitats. We get a big rain and it floods an area that has not been flooded for a long time. They're pretty good at quickly responding to those areas, and that's kind of what we're both seeing and hearing from people who are out there still pursuing them. One of the things that we had not seen until just recently was birds spreading out into this abundance of wetland habitat that we've got. We kept thinking, it's going to happen, but what we'd seen previously in our November, December surveys were big concentrations of birds in limited areas. There still were just in those kind of big wads, but the last week or so that has kind of changed. We're starting to see smaller numbers, which we would kind of expect this time.
It's something that hunters generally, when they're having some good days, may just kind of look at and say, I'm sleeping in, is a rain forecast. Because ducks, they're localized now at this point. We pretty much, they could create domicile in Mississippi. They've been here that long. But when it's raining, they know that there's fresh water that's falling from the sky. And they get up and they become curious. And I've heard success stories hunting in the rain. It may not be the funnest thing on earth because you got to clean all your stuff. You got to clean your shotgun when you're done. Right. But they respond better when they have low visibility. They're looking for that water. And that if you get some rain in the forecast, that may be something. Just get your waders on, get a parka, and hunker down, and you may have some success instead of sleeping in.
That's right. And there's a lot of people that are, may have been sitting around waiting. Kind of got these areas in mind that just the water hadn't gotten on them yet, and they know to go check those areas when you get a big rain. And hopefully there's some birds showing up and using those now.
Let's get a couple of questions answered. Some off topic, some not. What's the youngest I can buy my niece or nephew a lifetime hunting license and age for hunting course? Thank you.
I don't believe there is a limit on.
They got a birth certificate. They're old enough,
right? On the lifetime license.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a good gift.
Dennis wants to know, can wild hogs catch CWD? We don't know yet.
There's actually a little bit of evidence of that in a laboratory setting, I believe. I don't know that we've confirmed it in the field, but I want to say I saw or read a little bit of a study that they felt like they can actually get it, so possible.
Oh, goodness, that's all we need, isn't it? Well, we'll talk about some more duck hunting and waterfowl when we can. We'll talk about hunting along Mississippi public waterways, and the question, is it public or is it private? Let's talk about hunting waterfowl, Houston, along Mississippi public waterways, and that's the question. Was I supposed to ask another question? I had him ready for something else. No, did I? Okay, I'm making sure. I didn't want to mess you up there. We've got public or private. The question comes up each year when the old Big Muddy swells up with winter participation. Where can I go hunt ducks and not be trespassing? And I don't know if I was supposed to ask you that question or the other question, but y'all take care of it. Whoever needs it, get it. But that is actually why we got you here. So you do take that one, as a matter of fact, Tracy. I'm sorry, I messed you all up. That's the question when it gets up like this, and that's a question you deal with a lot, isn't it?
That is. Over in the Delta along the Mississippi River, we deal with that constantly. When we have a situation like we're coming into at this point in time, where we have floodwaters that have exceeded the normal banks of a waterway, and so our sportsmen need to realize what is a part of that public waterway and what is not a part of public waterway and is actually private property.
So what is the law there? Let's discuss that.
So any floodwaters that exceeded the normal banks of a navigable waterway would be considered to be private property. So you have to stay within the navigable waterway of that waterway that you would be hunting in.
Okay. That's kind of hard to do, though, when it's flooded, isn't it?
It is. One thing I like to use as a guide for all of the sportsmen that contact me in regards to this question are the aquatic habitat types and vegetation types that you would see within the navigable waterway. So as long as you're hunting in the willow trees and the button bush and those things that are defined as aquatic habitat which fall within the navigable waterway, then you would be considered to be hunting within the navigable waterway. Once you break what we consider to be the hardwood standing timber boundary, then you would be considered to be over private property at that point, and you would be trespassing.
I know that there's been Attorney General opinions over the years that have given us guidance, but those really aren't laws. And plus, you have adjoining state public water laws like Louisiana and Arkansas, and they're much different than Mississippi's too.
They are. Louisiana, in fact, basically defines trespassing at the standing timber boundary. So that could actually be within the public waterway, or what we consider to be the public waterway in Mississippi. Our laws are different from Louisiana. So Louisiana uses the standing timber boundary as their defined property boundary.
All right, and a lot of people think, well, if I can just get if I can access any area by boat as long as I go in by a public ramp, then I can hunt there, and that's not the case.
That is not the case. Actually, they would have to have permission from a landowner if they were crossing over private property to try to obtain access into the public waterway. They would need written permission from that private landowner that they were going across before they launched the vessel into a public waterway. And once they get into the public waterway, they need to be mindful of those areas that we've just described and what we've defined as a public waterway versus private property.
All right, and a lot of other questions here real quick about building a permanent duck blind amongst trees or brush that are found within bodies of public water.
That's right. Any structure that you erect in a public waterway is public property. It is not privately owned. So once you build it, you place it in a public waterway, it's there for whoever to use, first come, first serve. You may have spent all of your time and effort and money building that structure. It is in a public waterway, and it is therefore deemed to be public property.
Let's also, what about wading and tying up to trees? And there, what about that?
The Attorney General's opinion basically affords you the opportunity to anchor from trees, wade in a public waterway to hunt or fish within that defined public waterway. So those would all be lawful activities that you could engage in on Mississippi public waterways.
So what's a public waterway, huh?
That's a good point. When it's flooded, it's hard to know, isn't it?
Yeah, and so, like Tracy was saying, and he does a good job explaining it, but people are like, well, what level is that? Where is that defined level at? And it doesn't. It's flood stage along the Mississippi River, and so there's areas now where you're going to have to use his reference of the aquatic species that are living there, willow trees, butt brush, whatever, to kind of guide yourself. You're going to need to be familiar with that area. DEQ has a list on their website where the state statute in 5114 talks about an annual flow on streams that is less than 100 cubic feet per second. They have a map there. But these guidelines, they don't touch on oxbow lakes, right? Like the lakes that most people hunt up and down the river. And so DEQ has the authority only to list the streams that meet the flow requirements. So, then you go back, there's case law after case law dealing with this stuff because this issue hadn't been around just in the last 10 years. The reason it's been around is because there's really, really good hunting and fishing along the Mississippi River. There's also a lot of hunting clubs up and down the Mississippi River, and there's always seems to be some conflict this time of year where old Joe's going in there to duck hunt where he's hunted his whole life, and he's being told he can't be there, or he doesn't know how far to go, or old Joe goes way, way, way too far, and he is, passing people's tree stands and stuff trying to find a duck. So to try to kind of condense it in a 10-minute segment, we're doing our best because, we get these questions a lot. When the river's up, a month ago when duck season started, the river was 10, 12 foot lower than it is right now, but it was considered quote-unquote high for this time of year. And it opened up access to thousands and thousands of acres where ducks like to go. Duck hunting on the Mississippi River it's the top that you can get. I mean, ducks it's a world all to itself. But people that hunt it also have to realize that there's a private aspect to it, and they got to respect that. It's good. You can have a great time out there, but you also can ruin it if you push too far and you're not observing the private.
Yeah, and you not knowing where you are is not going to get you out of a ticket.
It's not, definitely is not.
Right. And you do this a lot. You work a lot around Eagle Lake, Chotard, those types of areas like that, where some great hunting, and it's one of those things. Even if it's a natural oxbow that can be accessed off the river, you still have to know exactly where you are.
You do, and that's why I try to use the reference of the defined aquatic vegetation and the habitat types that are associated with those navigable waterways. That's a visual reference that any hunter should be able to look at and be able to determine, yes, I'm in the navigable waterway, or no, I'm over private property.
Yeah. So basically, if you're hunting in a bunch of willow trees in an oxbow lake. People may wonder why in the world does a state line meander back and forth along the Mississippi River? We got Mississippi land on the west side of the main channel. We got Arkansas land over here. Well, when we were deeded that land, or when the state was formed in 1817, they formed it as the Mississippi River flowed at that current time. So that's how much it's changed in 100 or 200 years. Well, what's my math there, Butler?
They all change.
100 years.
They change all the
constantly.
time.
And that's what causes these oxbows and these, as they're referred to as avulsions. And so those are public water. But
that's why if you think about it like this, like if you sell a piece of land across,
right,
like you have land on both sides of the river, and you sell land on the other side, in the deed it will say from the middle of the river, because it's always going to change.
That's right. Yeah, right. And people do own the land underneath, but the water has been deemed public by numerous Supreme Court cases and then AG opinions. So basically what Tracy's saying is, if you're hunting in the willow trees on a state-lined waterway or an oxbow lake, you're probably pretty good. If you're hunting in a bunch of flooded pecan trees, you may need to be looking for a private landowner to be coming, or one of our officers to come and say, hey, you've gone a little too far. Because what he's saying is, if people out there don't know what he's talking about, the different type of trees, pecan trees don't grow in water. They grow on land.
This is true.
That are always pretty much on land.
Folks, it's common sense is basically what it all boils down to. And trust me when I tell you this, Captain Tullis and Major Reed, they've heard every excuse in the book. They've heard, I didn't know I was this or that, and guess what? That's not going to change the fact you're going to get a citation, because you got to pay attention. Just like anything else you do. You know that, folks. A little common sense. We just got to use it. We've got youth waterfowl hunting coming up on February 2nd, Houston, and also the light goose conservation order. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, I just want to remind people that we're definitely not in a hurry to usher in the end of our regular waterfowl seasons by any means, but definitely want to remind people that there are other opportunities after those seasons do close. Regular waterfowl seasons will close on January 27th, and then we will open up with our postseason light goose conservation order on January 28th. It'll go through February 1st, and then it will be closed that one day for the Youth Waterfowl Hunt Day that you mentioned. So we'll talk about the Youth Waterfowl Day first. It's our second day. We have two days a year that are outside of the regular waterfowl season that we dedicated just for youth hunting opportunities. And so Mississippi typically picks the Saturday before the regular season in November, and then the Saturday following the regular season. And that's just an additional day. It's for youth only, so adults can get out and take a kid on a hunt that should be focused specifically for the youth. Try to get them a last opportunity at some duck hunting and goose hunting. Youth must be in the presence of a Mississippi licensed adult, so we want to be sure and make that clear to people. And so the reason that we split those up is we used to hold both of those days within the same weekend, but we kept getting requests to split them up because sometimes you get a weekend, especially that first weekend in February, where the weather may be really bad, kind of a wash for the whole weekend. So we split them up to kind of give a better chance of having some good weather.
2 Saturdays, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So 2 Saturdays, typically a kind of a high use day of the week. And also, that last Saturday, that Saturday following the regular season, you typically have people that are going to, what we call pull their boards. The last day of duck season, the regular season is over. Maybe they don't have kids that are going to be hunting that next weekend, so they're going to be letting a lot of water loose down those ditches if the water level in the ditch allows that. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So typically what you have, even if we don't have a high number of birds, you just have less available habitat.
Yeah, they'll
so
become
you'll see that concentration effect.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Typically a pretty good situation.
You generally see when you're out working, you check some of these hunting parties, these kids come out, they've shot some bullets.
Yep.
They may not have success in the area of harvesting birds because those things are kind of tricky to hit.
That's right.
For a youngster. But they will get some shooting opportunities, I believe. Yeah, it's a good thing.
Definitely a good time. And then, so we briefly mentioned the postseason light goose conservation order. It will pick up again the day after that youth waterfowl hunt. and it'll run from February 3rd through the end of March, which typically overlaps the time period that we will still have geese hanging around here after the waterfowl season. And so that's another good thing to look out for if people are interested and have the desire or have the gear to get after those birds after the regular duck season is over. Those I think particularly of rice fields that have been drained, those fields that have been flooded for the duck season, they pull the water off. Those geese will really get in there a lot of times and start grubbing around for the last remaining waste rice in those areas. Just want to remind people that they do need to have a free permit number to participate in that light goose conservation order, and they can get that on the agency's website on the Waterfowl Program webpage. Hunters do need a valid Mississippi hunting license and state waterfowl stamp to participate in the conservation order. They're not required to have a federal waterfowl stamp for this particular opportunity. There's no daily bag limit on these birds, so the whole idea behind the conservation order is it's an opportunity to get out and have hunters try to help control these overabundant populations of light geese.
Can I ask just a stupid question?
Sure.
These are not the geese that terrorize the golf courses. Those are Canadian geese,
That's right.
correct?
Those are Canada geese.
Okay.
Yep.
So those are not in this order.
That's right. So this only applies to snow geese, blue geese, which is just a different color phase of a snow goose, and Ross's geese. So
okay.
they're the if you're driving across the Mississippi Delta this time of year and just seeing thousands and thousands of
some of us
geese.
think there should be an open season on those Canadian geese, but that's just my opinion. Never mind.
Right. Well, and to that point, we do have a season that is open on them right now. So we really encourage people who think they in the past they've had problems with Canada geese in the springtime. This would be the time of year if they're around for either them or someone else to get after them and help control those numbers.
But make sure you know what you're doing there, and you've got to have your duck stamps, just like a waterfowl stamp and all that other kind of stuff, and those types of things as well. Houston, thank you very much. I appreciate y'all all being here with us today. As a matter of fact, thank you, Captain Tullis, for being here. Major Reed.
Yeah.
Adam Butler.
Always a privilege.
Roll call's done. Yeah. Everybody, we'll see y'all next Monday for more Mississippi Outdoors Radio, as always, brought to you by the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Gallo Rewind coming up next, or the Eagle Hour. It's all here for you. Rebecca Turner's Good Things and Sports Talk Mississippi previewing the national championship game tonight. It's on the way for you this afternoon here on Super Talk Mississippi.